to Revolution Radio. If you didn't know, I know Mecky does. If you live in Kentucky, you can tune on an FM. Find 101.3 WZZR in Kentucky, or anywhere else in the entire world, including the ISS, or maybe the internet goes further than that. Certainly not in Australia, not broadband. Or you can get an application and listen to it if you're anywhere else. That's Revolution Radio app, TalkStream Live app, TuneIn.com app, Radio Tuner for everyone else but Australians. That's Radio Tuner. Or Shiny Side Out's very own app. It's our app. It's pretty cool. You should get it. With our app, you can actually get updates and everything that we throw out there. So it subscribes to our news channel and video feed and everything. At home, if you don't like any of that and you just want to listen to a physical radio sitting there anywhere else in the globe, actually you can get a digital radio. Choose a Grace tabletop digital radio, or if you're driving around in America in a GM motor vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio. All of these things, Mecky, as you know, are revolutions in radio. Guess what? I'm going to tell you, no one's done this yet, and I'll actually donate a free coffee mug to the first person that can prove to me that they've bought from the station a CD of our 2014 shows. I dare you, do it. And I'll give you a free mug. All right? So
that's nice.
It is. That's pretty good. I mean, Mecky doesn't know about this, so I'm just throwing promotions out there in the air.
Yeah.
Right?
Why don't you just go and spend our money?
Yeah, all $7.50. So, if you'd like to, please go and buy from the station our 2014 shows, and I'll donate personally. I'll donate a mug to you. You can call into the show if you're interested in expanding on what we're talking about. I do declare that you probably want to go to the chat room first and talk to us on air about that first before you dial in. But you can dial in if you're in the US. You can dial in on 347-688-2902, or if you have Skype, just like everyone else does. You have Mecky, don't you? Skype.
Sure do, sir.
Yeah, me too. So you can add Freedom Screen, all one word, Freedom Screen, and you can call that, and that'll actually call in through us. Now, I'm sure, as always, Solaris had a fantastic show, brimming with personality, information, and a great guest. However, I didn't hear any of it because I was at the Tuggerah Lakes UFO Society monthly meeting, and I missed every single word. Mecky, I'm going to have to go to the show archives and download it. That's what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah, look, I will too today because I'm actually in Melbourne, or as you might know it in America, Melbourne. And you can go to the show archives to find all of Solaris' shows, in fact. You're at Melbourne, right?
Melbourne. Oh, my God.
Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne. That's what we say. Brisbane, Melbourne. That's how we pronounce them here. If you're anyone else, you're going to go Melbourne, and you're going to stand out. You don't want to do that. You want to talk Australian. You want to speak like an Australian. You don't talk Australian. Then you say it that way. All right? If you're doing a world trip and you're including that in your international domestic flights, go ahead. Say it Melbourne. All right. Guess what, Mecky? Guess what?
Tell me.
Very interesting stuff that came out today in this UFO Society meeting, I have to tell you, to do with the Valentage case.
Okay.
Some stuff has come to light. Thank you to... It's actually a fan of the show as well, by the way. A person who found us through the internet, started listening to Revolution Radio, only to discover that they only live a couple of kilometres away, and big fans of the show. And they actually, because I mentioned Tuggerah Lakes UFO Society, they turned up there too.
Nice.
Awesome. And he knows who he is, and he brought out a whole bunch of stuff that he discovered about the Valentage case, which is awesome. And one of those was that there's been some paraphernalia that's come up. In Russia, there was a letter written out on a plate, believe it or not. written on
like a dinner plate, or
well, that's the way it was described, but in translating it from Russian, it could be just a large flat surface.
okay, gotcha.
All right. So let's go with just a flat surface written out, not a piece of paper. And it was written out, and it declared a whole bunch of things. And I have to say, one of those was a little unusual, and it was that he'd given up being on Earth, having agreed to a proposition by the aliens who had picked him up for helping them in their facilities, basically getting a job with them, to becoming immortal,
Right.
having longevity. And what's weird is there's been a number of sightings of a fellow who claims to be Valentich in recent times, who is about the same age as when he was disappeared, which is sort of consistent, you know. I can only imagine time is just something we've manufactured.
Completely. Which
is
actually quite serendipitous that you should come across information just today, Dave.
Absolutely. You know what? I think that falls into a segue, does it?
It sure does.
So this is show number 152.
250 and 100.
I still can't get the hang of that. But what we're talking about today, everyone, is immortality.
That's right. And extreme longevity. In fact, this is part of the lost show cycle we spoke about. There were some issues we had, excuse me, with the shows on YouTube, and some of them were lost. This is the very first one, I think, that was lost. If not the very first one, then it was among the very first. So we felt it incumbent upon ourselves to re-delight you with Immortality. It's a very long show, so it might have to go over 2 shows. Mm-hmm. A lot of good information here. So it was really good that Dave came across this information just today in this very, very interesting case of this potentially either immortal or maybe even a long-lived person.
Yes. Right? Yes, exactly. There's been I've been talking about immortality. I mean, we're talking about never dying or never aging, and this is something on our planet that every woman since the year dot has attempted to emulate.
Yes.
Anti-aging, this, immortality, that, but the stories go back to before the floods, don't they?
Oh, look, the stories, and in fact, the quest for immortality, personal immortality, we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
It goes right back to the beginning. In fact, if you read the Bible, and this is not just the Bible, but because I guess most of our listeners are of a Judeo-Christian background, and I'm just making a huge assumption here. You're probably familiar with the story of the Garden of Eden, right? Now, the Garden of Eden, we ate from the tree of knowledge, according to the good book, right? Believe it or not, I don't really care, to be honest with you. But people think that's why we were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, at least according to the Bible. Not true. Not true at all. We were kicked out so we wouldn't eat from the second tree, the tree of life. And had we eaten from the second tree, the tree of life, we would have become as God, it says in the Bible. Now, I personally believe that the Bible has a lot of history of intervention, of visitors and such, ancient technologies that we've lost over the millennia. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the oldest hints that we have, that the serpent, as he is called in the book, gave a knowledge to Adam and Eve, mankind, if you will, and was then prevented to give them immortality. So they were cast out from the garden and sent east. And this is actually very similar to the story of Prometheus, who stole fire, i.e. knowledge from the gods, and gave it to us. Okay, these are all ancient echoes of the same event, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So it goes right. You're absolutely correct, Dave. It goes right back. But we also want to look at aging and what happens. What happens when you age? Because the thing is this, Dave, right?
Yeah.
We can't really say why we die, right? I mean, why do we die?
Yeah, actually, that's a crazy thing. I think to describe that, the immortality exists, then yeah, you're right. We have to look at what is the basis of it, and you know, we'll get into this, but it looks like it's an intentionally wrapped around genetic code that makes us die. It gives us an end of life, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, you're exactly right. You're 100%. You hit it on the head. There are organisms which we're going to share with you on the planet that are, for all intents and purposes, immortal. Specifically, one organism we're going to talk about as well. And you're right. I mean, it almost seems like we have got a built-in kill switch.
I know that's crazy sounding, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I mean, who would put it there?
Someone designed. For all of those people who are into intelligent design, I'm sort of with you on this, but I have to say, Meki, it doesn't it reek of intervention, doesn't it?
Look, absolutely. And again, maybe Dave and I come across incorrectly here. I want to, and I don't want to offend anyone because everybody's got their own beliefs, but I would like to be honest with you and admit, frankly, that neither Dave nor I are religious. We're spiritual and we have got faith, but we're not religious and we don't subscribe to any specific faith, even though in my family every faith is well represented. but we look, I don't want to speak for you, Dave, but I certainly am probably more of the agnostic bend. Whereas like I don't really know. What I do know is there's extremely strong circumstantial evidence, okay, in my opinion, for interventionism. Interventionism, just very quickly, means that somebody at some point in our collective history somehow tampered with us, with our genetic material, with our ancestors. I don't know. Okay, I wasn't there, but there's a very strong collection of evidence that Dave and I have shared with you. And again, this was one of the very first shows. Remember, this was show number 6, 3 years ago, that we shared with you this information. Not much has changed, to be honest. And it's I mean, Dave, look, I think interventionism is a very valid theory, I think.
Because it's not debating the question of who did it, just that had it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the answer, of course, we're not giving you any final answers, because you will say, well, you know, who created then these visitors, or you know, if who created that creator? Look, very, very low genetic diversity. As a species, we have more kin with domesticated animals than with wild animals. You know, so from a genetic point of view, so we've got very, very low variability in our gene pool, and that goes back, of course, to the bottleneck. We've spoken about mitochondrial Eve. You know, we've also spoken about the I think there's a name for Adam as well. The scientific name escapes me. But essentially, what it boils down to that between 80 and 120,000 years ago, there seems to have been a bottleneck event or a number of bottleneck events that killed off the genetic variety within our species.
We had a bit of audio issue back there. We've gone through, and I could sort of make out what you were saying. Sure, it'll be fine. It also raises a few questions. Now, I've heard something recently which tends to leave itself open to us having been placed here, because, as you said, we don't seem to share very much with everyone. I mean, there's, you know, if you go by evolution, which I'm not discounting, I think evolution occurs, and we've certainly evolved a little bit, since we've been here. And you know, you can see the same bone structure in a whole bunch of creatures going back in time. But as Lloyd Pye, when we interviewed him, he talked about 48 chromosomes being reduced to 46. Yeah. And that doesn't naturally occur in other animal species arms of the evolutionary tree, in the branches. And so he's tending to believe that maybe it was a little hodgepodge. You know, we'd been evolving quite nicely, thank you, until something happened. And the Anunnaki certainly talk about it. The Anunnaki there's the Sumerians talk about an event in which something happened. I got a lot of glaring on my fake background, and so it's very strange that they should that it should come out now. Of course, the Sumerian text is a long way away, some 2,500 years ago. For this to be, brought out today, I think is something else. Now that we have the science to back it up. So, Meki, do you have any news?
Look, there's a piece of news I want you to think about. Right now, we're seeing a war being waged. You wouldn't call it that. It's the oil war. It's the OPEC, which is the oil-producing nations of the world, against the U.S. shale oil producers. Right? You might have seen the oil drop in Australia. We certainly had a huge drop in prices at the oil pump.
Yep.
I'm all for it. However, that is designed to drive the shale oil producers out of business. Why? How? Now, the shale oil producers have to invest a whole bunch of capital in order for shale oil to be put into production, whereas the existing oil wells in the Middle East specifically only have to carry the cost of an electric pump. So they can drop the price a lot, making it virtually economically impossible for the shale oil producers to continue pumping their oil. I find it very convenient and odd that the King of Saudi Arabia should leave us
and die.
Yeah,
right around. Yeah, didn't
right.
You thought the same thing, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So age of 90, okay, he's old. Yeah, but his brother, who's now 80 odd, I think, is taking over as king, which is okay. But I just find it odd that he would pass away of pneumonia just at this particular point in time. Is it a warning shot, by the shale oil producers? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there. That's all.
Well, do you know what? Do you think I wouldn't put it past them to do this kind of thing.
Yep.
To be honest, I mean,
100%.
If I came up with that, I haven't come up with free energy, but if I was to somehow come up with free energy, I'd want the world to know. But do you think they'd want the world to know that you could get around for free? Probably not.
Mm.
So that's sort of where we're leaning on this. It just reeks, doesn't it?
Yep, I agree with you. It does. Look, and this is the kind of thing that would happen. People always say you have to be ethical. You have to do ethics. We actually have ethics training in our company, right? Every 6 months, we have to fill in the questionnaire, and I'm laughing because it's very childish, right? I mean, it's like saying, if someone gives you a knife, should you stab someone in the heart? The answer is obviously no. Right? This is the nature of the questions they ask you. Now, whether or not you actually do that in the business world is a different thing. Having said that, in reality, the real business world, my father was a businessman, and he was an import-exporter, he was managing director, and had all kinds of issues here and there, and he did it in Europe, he did it here in Australia. The business world is the least ethical environment there is. Mm-hmm. The only thing that matters is making money, profit, right? And you do what you have to do in order to do it. So ethics don't come into it. And if a business partner or business rival even were to be eliminated, people would do it. I mean, it'd be a good thing in some instances. And if there's a lot of money at stake, a human life is cheap, very cheap. I mean, look at the history of the world, really. I mean, it's not that far-fetched or unbelievable to assume that people would, in fact, knock off the competition.
Yep.
Right? So, again, Dave is correct in saying it is not something we should entirely dismiss. I'm not saying it happened that way. It certainly has happened in the past. Okay? The same in politics. Political rivals have been dealt with in a similar fashion. The mafia, they're businessmen as well. They nothing against the mafia. I got nothing against them. They have to do business, and they do what they need to do. Not just the mafia specifically, but any mafia-like organization that does business in this fashion. Right? I mean, it is true. Look, guys, this is reality. Okay, we're talking about reality here, not not the world we would like to live in, but the actual world we live in, where people do what they need to do to get ahead. Right? It's unfortunate, but it's true. So yeah. So anyway, that's what I want to share with you guys. But I'm sure you Dave, have a number of juicy items for us.
Oh, you went in the wrong direction with that one.
We have no juicy items.
I don't have anything else to bring up. I figured that the best thing, because I don't want to go on a political rant. All I want to say is, look, if you haven't seen it, that Je suis Charlie unedited video with the perpetrator apparently shooting the guy in the head with an AK-47, holding it with one hand, and it has zero recoil. Plus, it doesn't injure the fellow at all and just hits the concrete next to him. I really ask that everyone go and have a look at that, because it's once again it's an eye opener, and this was subsequently blurred out of the media footage. But if you can find the unblurred image, go ahead, knock yourself out and come to your own conclusions, because all I could determine from it was, once again, false flag. Don't believe anything.
Yeah.
I watched them storm into Meki. This is interesting. I watched them storm into the cafe in an attempt, obviously, to bring those two perpetrators into custody. Some 30 police, 30, right? There was hostages or something, and this one guy goes in. All the rest are too afraid to go in. He goes in. They start shooting. But 3 rows back of policemen, three rows back, they were shooting, and they were shooting through the other policemen.
Oh, wow.
But there was no one hurt.
Oh.
There was no one to shoot at. Yeah, you couldn't see anyone. But the camera angle, maybe, I don't know. But it definitely, only the front row is supposed to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's staged, and then you get these people going, well, I'm holding his, I'm supposed to, maybe I'm supposed to shoot too. Yeah, so he starts shooting, but he's 3 rows back, and you don't do that. That's how America. Sorry, that shouldn't be rude, but that's how more Americans, lose their lives. This is controversial. During wartime, you got friendly fire. Friendly fire kills more people, than Australians die in warfare, because we don't.
That's
heavily controversial. I'm not going to speak for you, Meki, but
no, you're right. It's true. It's another one of those terms that is describing such a horrific thing in such nice terms. Oh, friendly fire. Okay. No, it means that our guys kill our guys. That's what it means.
That's right.
So it's not friendly fire. Collateral damage. Okay, okay. No, I'm sorry, but I hate it when people put things like that into phrases like that. It just doesn't sit well with me.
Because one of the things that Meki and I talk about all the time is that once you name something, they forget it.
Yep.
They forget about it. Remember this Je suis Charlie thing. The thing that got them into trouble in the first place was, printing a cartoon of a deity. Right, not allowed to do that. It's not allowed. In that deity's framework, you're not allowed to do that. That's bad. So what do? What's the very next thing they do? Print it again.
Yep.
How many copies, Meki? From 500 to 3 million, didn't they? Or was a print run?
Yeah.
They made some money off that, I'll tell you. What happened to the CEO, Meki?
Again?
What happened to the CEO of Charlie?
Actually, I'm not sure. What happened to him?
He's dead.
That's right.
That's mysterious, isn't it? Why isn't that in the media?
Yes, that's a good point.
And why are all the world leaders arm in arm walking down the street? I think I mentioned it last week. But you know what I mean? I think, what? So free speech is awesome, but you can't be the head of a cartoon, like a satirical paper, and stay alive because they'll kill you, because the whole thing was fraudulent. I don't believe any of it occurred at all. Now, after reviewing the footage showing the 2 perpetrators shooting an AK-47 at almost point-blank range, and this policeman was supposed to have been shot in the head, nah, he wasn't. An AK-47 will obliterate your head at point blank. But you can see the puffs of concrete dust coming up in front of him. There's no recoil on the weapon. And he's holding it with one hand.
Very strong.
This guy must have been King Kong under all that clothing. He must have looked like Arnie in his good days.
In his good days.
I'm being nice. What is he, 60, 70? I don't know. I love you, Arnie. I love you, Arnie, wherever you are, man. You're awesome. All right? You've been an idol of mine for a long time. All I can say is, it's another thing that reeks. It reeks of do you know what? I'd love for there to be, and I don't mean to be real death, right? I'm not loving that part. I'd love there to be a real issue somewhere really in the world that really happened and there was no faults with it.
Yeah.
No faults. I'd love there to be, people's mobile phone, camera footage not pointing out faults with it. I'd like there to be consistency across all of the filming. No blurring out. I don't want to see blurring out. We see enough Hollywood death to, not be fazed by someone who isn't injured at all being blurred out, unless the message is that he's so horrifically misfigured that we can't show that on TV. But the unedited footage shows him nothing wrong with him. Not even blood spilled. I tell you, AK-47, 1 foot from your head, half your head is missing.
Okay, no matter what your persuasions out there and what you believe and don't believe, that certainly sounds odd. Anyone would have to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that bears further investigation, which of course won't happen because it has now been accepted as a historical fact.
Exactly. Meki, I was telling some people, I was sitting around at my lunch table at work, and we have great discussions, and one of those was, World War II. That came up. Someone else brought it. It was fun. And we're talking about it. And it was fun in a historical way because we've got Anzac Day coming up, and I've got medals from my serving relatives that I'm going to wear in a march, and, blah, blah, blah. And I respect the people that fought on behalf of some idealistic, insane leader. Because it wasn't their fight, it was the leader's fight. Yeah. And these suckers get torn into it, and it's, for what purpose? What? Cleansing? Depopulation?
Well, somebody's making it. Look, the key thing here is, Dave, and you're 100% correct, is that there are a lot of people and others benefiting from war and destruction. There's cleansing, yes, there's the profit motive, right? You get rid of unliked people, unliked races, in some cases, right? Or maybe you just want to own that city. Who knows? Maybe you had a bad love affair and you just, punish the entire nation for it.
Oh, yeah, that could happen.
Right? And so the thing is this, people always benefit. I make no mistake. People say, you lose this in the stock market and that war has destroyed that. Yeah, that's all true. But somebody is benefiting. Could be financial benefit, could be other benefits. But somebody's benefiting. You follow that profit motive, and I'm not just talking about money, right? You follow the profit motive, you get to the bottom of things. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Okay? So you're right, Dave. This is insanity. People were marching. This is what my grandparents told me. World War I. People were happy to go to war. We're going to fight the Frenchmen again, because obviously they were German, right? So they were in Germany, and they told me that people were, excited to go to war again with France, and we're gonna knock them over again, like it was some kind of wrestle match at a picnic on a Sunday. Yeah,
it's spectacle.
Yeah, in fact, the Civil War in the United States, okay, in the 1860s, people. There were battlefields. So you have to understand, in the oldness, there were battlefields, and people would meet in battle. Especially after the 30-year war, people decided to be more civilized in the war, and they had battlefields, armies, facing off to each other. And what the Americans did in the Civil War, at the very beginning, people would drive out to come watch the battle. They had picnics by the side of the battle. Okay, so the whole towns would turn up, families, and then it all just went horribly wrong at one point. But that's us. We just love to watch the accident. It's horrible.
Look, yeah, you're right. It really is. And look, I don't mind. I mean, it's hard for me to say, right? Because I've got relatives that who sadly had to fight on behalf of other world leaders whose fight it was really theirs, not ours. And like I said, I find it difficult to take some of that. But look, the main point here is that I think we're staring down the barrel of something coming. Now we talked about this in the last show, but Mickey, this week, I said I had no news. What did they just changed the time on the doomsday clock?
Yeah, they moved it up
2 minutes from five to midnight. Now it's 3 to midnight.
That's actually significant, guys. At the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think we were at 3 or 2 minutes as well.
Yep, we're looking. We're currently staring down the tip of the iceberg as far as world conflicts are concerned. We're not, and they gave climate change. Climate change isn't the end of the world, right? Unless we're not told something. Yeah. Meteor impact, that could be the end of society as we know it, right? But it's still not the end of the world, unless it's significant enough to cause an ELE.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, is it economic collapse? Yeah, that'll take a whole bunch of people out. But this is the doomsday clock. This isn't, I missed the bus. This isn't a trivial event. We're talking the end of humanity. This is doomsday. So why would you change the doomsday clock? And they go, Fukushima. Well, that's the first time I've heard Fukushima mentioned in the media for years.
I know.
That disappeared. There wasn't even a 5-second read on the news about Fukushima in the last year. But here we go. We've got so much changing in the planet right now. What do they know that we don't know?
I would wager a whole bunch. That's what I would say.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, you're right. I shouldn't question what I don't know. All I can say is I'm quietly convinced that there's something going on. That I noticed that I'm guessing there's around about 5,000 troops going to the Ukraine. Hello, if you don't know, they're in a training exercise with the Ukrainians. Hang on, no. I believe that they're being sent there to be the first point of contact.
Possible.
We know that they're surrounding China. We know that the US is surrounding Russia. It makes sense, doesn't it? You would go there. You got an ally so close to you. What a great excuse! Send some more troops.
Yeah, of course. The thing is this, right? I mean, it is an obvious thing to assume that the Americans want to retain their global position. The lone superpower or mega power or whatever you're going to call it. I don't care. Now, bear in mind though that we have shared with you our hypothesis, and that hypothesis calls for a population reduction of, well, it doesn't call for it; it predicts it, of several billion. Any excuse will be good enough to actually achieve the population reduction. Okay, so is it a war? Yeah, sure, could be war, could be natural disaster, could be disease. Economic disasters will do it. If the economy collapses and maybe with it our power grid, our transportation system, that'll do it. Don't need a zombie apocalypse. We'll eat each other. You don't need zombies to eat us. Become cannibals very quick. Trust me. We've seen in the past. So there is definitely an agenda, and I think the agenda is accelerating. We're seeing the acceleration happening all around us. Events that we would have never. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I would have never ever predicted the rise of ISIS or the Islamic State or whatever you want to call it. I was flabbergasted. I mean, I actually studied the Middle East at university. That was my major. Okay, I majored in political sciences with the focus point of the Middle East, and I know my history. And I know my history in the Middle East specifically. The rise of the Islamic State took me completely by surprise. I mean, how can these guys stand up to trained national armies? Who finances them? Who trains them? I mean, there's not a few thousand. There's tens of thousands of those guys.
You have just asked all the right questions. One of the answers that I've got for you here is I noticed that they're talking about Australia's involvement in ISIS, and that we went from 70 to 90 people in the last 2 months. Wow, 10 people a month. Wow, that's terrible. 10 people from this country are volunteering to go over there and fight for ISIS.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think everyone has the right to do whatever they want, but within the country's rules, you can't return.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You can't fight for an enemy and then expect to come home all smiles and sunshine. Yeah. So, only, I think it's at Iceland. I think it's Iceland or Greenland. I think it must be Iceland. In Iceland, they have a policy that says, look, you can go and do it, go ahead. And when you come back, we'll help you reunite with society again. Unless you've committed a crime.
Yeah.
And I like that. They've got their arms open, like a child who might have run away from home. The parents keep their arms open with love, and when that child returns, you know what? You're going to love them just the same. Yeah. And that's it. That's the only difference, because everywhere else on the planet, it's the worst thing that could ever have happened. And Meki, what has happened in the Middle East throughout the centuries that's different to now? I mean,
nothing.
Exactly.
It's exactly the same. In fact, well, maybe it's heating up a little. Now, what we have done, though, and this has happened for a long time as well, the West has always interfered, drawing the borders, and reshaping nations. We did it after World War I. We did it again after the Gulf War.
Yep.
We essentially destroyed Iraq. We separated it into 3 sections, right? The South, the Middle, and the North. And we turned a fairly powerful state regionally into a failed state. That's us. That was us. Okay, we took Saddam Hussein away. I'm not saying he was insane. What I'm saying, though, is he held Iraq together.
Yep.
And all the things we're seeing now, everything that is happening at the moment, is a direct result of our intervention, and in fact, our unjustified invasion of Iraq. I mean, Afghanistan was flimsy, okay, the invasion there, okay, but okay, you say that they have training camps there, okay, I get it, right? I still am against it, and I still think it was a huge excuse to do something that you wanted to do anyway. And then you go into Iraq with no justification at all. Zero. Everything was completely fabricated, right? And look at what happened. Look at it. Look at today. Today, people are getting their head chopped off. Oh, what a shock.
Well, I mean, we mentioned this before, and people are getting their head chopped off in South America, in Africa, in Saudi Arabia, and they're getting more people are getting their heads chopped off in Saudi Arabia than in Iraq. But are we not invading there? Because they're apparently friends. They did a study, Mickey, this is just a simile, right? They did a study of rats in New York, and the rats themselves have a perimeter, a territory. So if you live in an apartment in New York and you kill the rat that's in your apartment, another one moves in to take its place. Because they're territorial. And since there's no one to defend the territory, another one goes, oh, cool, there's no one here. I'm here. So just like in Iraq, you take the kingpin away, all of them fight to be king of the hill until you have something that's a controlling interest over that area. Since they had no resistance, voila. But like Meki, I didn't see it coming. I don't know whether it's real so much. I don't know. I'm not there, but we only have them. And look, if it is real, I'm so sorry for all the people that have been killed. If this is just a way to promote, because look, to be honest, the Western societies never needed to say one word about ISIS, did they? No. That would have kept it quiet. No one would have known about it, and no one would be leaving their own respective country to go and help fight in it.
Right.
Right? So that would have actually gotten the outcome they wanted. But no, let's pump it down the media and polarize people. You're on side or you're not on side. And those people that are on site are leaving and going and doing the thing. So what I'm seeing...
You get it?
I'm a conspiracy theorist. So, all I'm seeing is the polarization of the entire planet, and people like Murdoch saying that you have to blame Islam for it. It's all Islam. I think that's a bit off the cuff, and I don't agree with that statement. But I think it's pretty hard to see if you can't see that the entire planet is now being polarized, like the Crusades, all those many centuries ago, where it's one group versus another group. They're creating a group that we all have to have a common enemy.
Yep.
It's calling sides. That's really what it is. And it's happening not only in one theatre, but it's happening in another, and that's with Russia and China.
Yep.
China likes to say that they're one step away from everything. We're not part of that. But the trading partners, Iran, China, and Russia, they're friends. You can't do something to one of those friends without all of them ganging up on you. So, look at the doomsday clock. I think it's another war. I think it's a world war. This is my thoughts, and I really think that something's going to happen. And I think it's this year. So I put a lot of I'm buying a lot of stock in that. Other than that, it's a space catastrophe they haven't told us about.
Yeah.
So they spend a lot of money to go up in space to look at stuff for no reason.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I hear you. Now, bear in mind, though, this is something I believe very firmly, that if it does come to a conflict or some kind of ELE, which, by the way, means extinction level event of some sort, I do believe that the elite, the people that matter the most to themselves, will be okay. So you can rest easy. I had a boss once who told me, we're not sure if you guys going to be okay, like this management meeting a while ago, not sure if everybody keeps their job, but guys, just in case you're wondering, I'm okay. Well,
that's a great management motivational speech, that is.
That's important, you're okay. You're okay then. Woo, I sleep easy now. That's from a Dilbert comic. I know, but it's actually real, right?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, look, guys.
Meki, since we can't solve that crisis, and we don't really know the bottom of it, what do you reckon we start talking about immortality and extreme longevity?
Oh, completely.
All right.
Look, it's been a fantastic discussion, Dave. I love enjoying it. I enjoy it, and I love the back and forth. And
me too.
Guys, so we want to talk about immortality and extreme longevity. That's important for our hypothesis, and that's why it was one of the very first shows we did, because we postulate there is an elite out there that has in fact achieved personal immortality, right? Or somehow has managed to break through the reincarnation cycle and is born with all of their memories intact. Now, by the way, just on that, you must watch the movie I Origins. It is a fascinating and very interesting movie, I Origins, okay?
Is that the beginning of the iPad?
And not at all. Not at all. It's much, much better. So if you have the chance to watch it, so it's I as in I, the first person pronoun, so I, and then just Origins. Okay, not I as in the I, but anyway, it's a play on words. You'll see it.
I as in the letter before J.
That's the one.
Okay.
But it also refers to the actual ocular device. Now, aging. What happens? Let's talk about that for a second here, because that's very important to come to grasp with. Why do we age? Why do we get older? What happens? What are the molecular processes that make us look older and so forth? What are the other environmental factors that help the aging process? Gravity is working against us, I can tell you that. You age a lot better in space. It doesn't do anything for your organs, though. That's not so good. Or your bone density, right?
Yeah, and muscular dystrophy as well.
Completely. Now, so the way we live has an impact on how we age, so all the toxins you consume, right? Your body has a cleansing system. The liver, which is the only organ in your body that actually regenerates, up to a point, and it has filtration systems, which are your kidneys, and so on and so forth. All right, so there are certain measures in place to make sure you don't immediately die if you do something silly like drink alcohol. However, abuse of substances, if you keep eating fatty foods and drink more alcohol than is healthy for you, and you smoke like a crazy person, take drugs, your body will age quicker. So you're actually destroying yourself on a cellular level. That's you. Look, I get that, and that wouldn't really bother me because that's in your control, and if people do that, so be it. However, the actual cellular degeneration occurs whether or not you do any of this or not. Okay, your cells will degenerate. They will become more and more flawed. Okay, and this is where cancer comes in as well. Cancer essentially comes into a cell that is damaged, and then keeps writing itself like really bad code, virus code, right? And just creates more of itself, which is completely anathema to your body. And in fact, diverts blood flow and all kinds of things away from your body to itself, and then slowly, essentially, eats you. That's what a cancer does.
Because it creates itself as a life form within your body. All right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I want to take mitochondrial DNA and telomeres when we get there.
Oh, please! Actually, I was going to say that. So what we have all around ourselves, within ourselves, is DNA, right? So that's the basic building blocks of what we are, the DNA molecules and the structure thereof. Now, Dave will talk a bit about telomeres and stem cells as well as mitochondrial DNA. So Dave, what happens in the so-called junk DNA?
Well, what's funny is when they first looked at DNA sequencing, they discovered a whole bunch of code that just seemed erroneous. It seemed like it just was repetitive on and on and on and on and on, looking at the same code. They didn't understand really what it did. I mean, it's like when you look at a text file. There's bits where there's no text and there's bits where there is text. The bits where there is text, there's a lot of changes. But there's bits where there's no text in that text file. You can see there's really nothing going on. And so what they did inside DNA, they discovered really quickly, there's bits where there's stuff going on, and there's bits where it's just repetitive, empty junk. There's nothing there. And now especially at the end of your DNA strand, there's a ton of information there that doesn't seem to be there for any reason. It's just repetitive code, and it gets shorter by half every time your cell replicates. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. I know that it chops a little bit off every time. I was told it kept halving itself originally. And the only thing that protects it is your telomere. A telomere is like that little plastic bit on the end of your shoelace, and I hope everyone still has shoelaces on. I think our audience is intelligent enough to wear shoes and tie shoelaces. It's a joke, everyone. All right, so you're either loafers or flip-flops. But that little plastic bit stops your shoelace from unraveling. And what telomeres do, it's basically, if you're a computer person, it's the checksum at the end.
That's right.
And once that is completely gone and contains no more bits of information, which is basically the junk DNA that's there to be replicated, what happens is you can no longer maintain a correct DNA strand after replication. And so mutations occur, and whilst we have quite a few base pairs in our DNA, it doesn't take very much for anomalies to occur. The first things that we notice as we're aging, after about 30 to 35 years old, if you're lucky, it's later, so maybe 38. But after you have had a sufficient amount of replications of your cells, the telomeres are gone, you start unraveling, and you start to notice things. What you start to notice is that your skin elasticity starts to deteriorate. Your skin doesn't look fantastic anymore like it did. Beautiful, smooth skin. The skin on you is your largest organ. It covers the most of you and has the most information in your DNA. And what happens is your corruption, while it can be repaired, and we'll get to that later on, it's not capable of maintaining itself very well, so you start getting errors. And basically those errors are what makes you look visibly aged, and what makes you feel aged, and what makes the deterioration of your body. Now, we know there's a jellyfish out there, Mackie, isn't there?
There is, sir.
There's a jellyfish who, after replicating, takes itself backwards in DNA time, grows its telomeres, and then lives another life again.
Yep.
And so some jellyfish that are out there in the sea have been around for, well, no one can guess, but maybe millions of years, if it's lucky enough not to have been eaten. Remember that, like cancer, the longer you're alive, the more chance you have of succumbing to it or being, exposed to it. Like a predator, the longer you're alive, the more likelihood you have to being eaten by something. So you have to say, there comes a cost, and some of those other costs with longevity are that your loved ones will pass away if we could live forever. So
that's correct.
Stem cells are blank cells that grow up next to another cell, which read the other cell's identity and say, oh, I should be and if it's next to a skin cell, skin cell. If it's next to a muscle cell, something from your retina, your spinal column, bone, whatever it is, it becomes one of those. It's really interesting. Over to you, Mackie.
Alrighty, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Look, that's exactly right, guys. So that's a bit of background as to what happened. So again, it seems like there is a design here, right? I mean, you put something in place, and the more you copy it, the less perfect the copy becomes. There's no reason for that to be. Okay? And stem cells are abundant in a growing child, in an infant, of course, in an embryo, certainly, and then fall away as you get older until you've got none left. If we all underwent stem cell therapy, we would live a lot longer and look a lot younger. Okay, so that's one way toward immortality, potentially. Now, we're talking about personal immortality rather than virtual immortality, right? So everybody always wanted to be immortal in some fashion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the great artists, war leaders, Mozart, Hitler, Plato, Attila the Hun, whoever they might have been, Caesar certainly, right? Gaius Julius, they all wanted to be bigger or larger than life. They wanted to be remembered. And that's a certain kind of immortality. We're talking about immortality here that is personal and very much real for the people that have it. We'll talk about this stone of the philosophers as well in a little while. Now, extreme longevity is extremely long lifespans, and not just up to 120 years of age. We're talking about extended spans of life, which are in the thousands and potentially even the millions of years, right? If you look at the ancient Egyptian texts, the very first Egyptian kings, the god kings, they lived for hundreds of thousands of years, according to the king lists. Okay, that was well before the flood. Okay, now I just want to share a few factotums for you, or rather factoids, a little data points. The longest scientifically accepted lived human being was Jean-Louis Calment. She was born February 21, 1875, and lived to August 4th, 1997, which means that she lived 122 years and 164 days, and she lived in Orléans in France. Okay, so
that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Now, there is also a not scientifically accepted person by the name of Shirali Muslimov, who allegedly lived from 1805 to 1973. That's 168 years, guys. Now, scientists believe he used the passport either of his father's or his grandfather's, as he displayed extremely good health when they came to visit him. So that whether or not that is true, I don't know. However, we have always been fascinated with immortality and specifically personal immortality, right? And look at the architecture that we've created. Look at the empires, right? So bloodlines will echo through time. Your family stays alive in power That's form of immortality. Dynasties, right? That's what I'm talking about here. Literature, music, and so forth. Now, I think it is clear, and this is really the point we're trying to make here. It is clear that immortality and living forever has been on our minds for a very long time, and it's something that most of us actually would aspire to. I mean, most of us want to live for a very long time in perfect health. I think we're not overstating the case here.
Well, I'm not, Mickey. Listen. If I ask you two questions, do you want to look older?
No.
No. Do you want to look younger?
Yes.
Everyone has that built in. We don't want to look older. And it's not a fear of looking older. We just prefer not to. And that's the basis of what we're going to cover on the other side of the break. And I'll tell you, Meki, the fountain of youth, the mystery that we're going to cover off, the mystery of the fountain of youth. And you know what, I have to tell you, when we were doing the research for this actually comes from show number 6.
Yep.
And when we were doing the research for this, I'd heard of the fountain of youth, but I'd never got to the bottom of it. And it was only when we did the research in this, and I thought that was truly amazing.
Yep.
What we discovered, and then we'll cover off some of the scientific discoveries that have pushed us a little bit further along, and we'll even provide you some links. It should be pretty awesome, and looking forward to that. So what we're going to do is ask you to hold on, make a donation, possibly instead of donating, buy a CD. It's the same thing. Enjoy. We'll see you after the short break.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Hello and welcome to Revolution Radio here at freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported internet radio station in the world. So, want to ask you, do you have a favorite host or several here at Revolution Radio? Don't have the time to catch every show when it's live? Well, you can get all the shows of your favorite host for the year 2014 on one data DVD. So you can play on your preferred device at any time. The cost, just $30 plus shipping. Now, remember, I'm just one guy, so allow up to 2 weeks or 10 business days for delivery. Also, the hosts themselves get half of the net proceeds. So not only are you supporting Revolution Radio, you're supporting your favorite host as well. So just go to our homepage and click the banner that says your favorite show. It's just down. It's easy to find. Big old letters. Anyway, so thank you. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. We are taking pre-orders for the 2014 and we'll start shipping after.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons? Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out. We are halfway through show number 152, 250, and 100. We're talking about immortality and extreme longevity, and we've discussed some other things as well. If you had the time to donate, fantastic. You can find the time still. Even if you're listening to us somewhere else, on YouTube or maybe on the archives on Revolution Radio, simply go to the website. In the chat room, it's on the left-hand side. There's a donate button there. The radio runs on your money alone. If you like what you hear, please help us keep this station alive. Now, let's get right back into where we left off.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. If anyone is a Twitter fan, today's hashtag is extreme longevity. Okay, extreme longevity, and we'll be looking at the comments later on. So Mackie, yeah, this is the thing, yeah. We're talking about extreme longevity and immortality, and one of the things that came up was, well, how early on was the hunt for it, and how successful were they?
This is a little aside for you guys, the Fountain of Youth, but we're going to share some of the Chinese or Far Eastern hunts for immortality as well with you. So this is the Fountain of Youth. The Fountain of Youth was a spring that the Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon, according to legend, went looking for in Florida in 1513. It was said that anyone who drinks from the fountain would have his or her youth restored. Florida was thought to be site of the Fountain of Youth because of native stories in the Caribbean of a restorative spring located north of the Bahamas. These native legends were combined with the popular story in Europe about a quest for a fountain of life. Now, did he find it? Well, we don't know. Probably not. And he may never have gone looking for it, okay? Now, accounts of his searching or his search for the Fountain of Youth came to us many years after Ponce de Leon's death and may have been romantic additions to his story of exploration. Now, we can't dismiss it, but we don't know. Now, why a fountain, right? Good question. Legends about healing waters have been legion in all cultures around the world. You know, there are biblical stories of Jesus healing a man with water, to legends in the Middle East and Asia of various healing springs. People have always talked about and quested for water that will restore youth and health. Some you might be familiar with the waters of Lourdes in France. People go there all the time to be healed. In fact, in Germany, the restorative springs, or Kurorte, spas, if you will, right, are still in use. The Romans established them. I went to a few myself. The water is heavy with minerals, and you do feel rejuvenated after either drinking it or swimming in it. And these legends were taken to a peak in the 16th century in Europe as tales of the exploration of the New World entered into the popular culture. Makes sense. Now, however, and this is where we are putting our tinfoil hat on. Okay. Shiny side out time. Here we go, tinfoil hatting it. Now, Klaus Donner, whom we would love to interview one of those days, is talking about a spring that was found in South America that contains silver and gold in nano form. Whoa, I'm going to get Dave to talk about that at length, believe me. Monoatomic. Okay, and we had, in fact, a show about ORME and its potential health benefits, including life extensions, but let Dave explain in a second. And has purportedly higher healing qualities than the waters at Lourdes, which I just mentioned. Okay, now, is it psychosomatic, something else? We don't know. But we've got a link here. You can. The link is part of the show notes. It's actually up on the website. I'm going to paste it right now into the chat room. So look for yourself. Look, have a look and see what you think. But Dave, why don't you side of things here of gold? That is.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been called a whole bunch of things, and if that stimulates something in us to give us some youthful attributes, the fountain of youth, orms, the elixir of life, and it's a whole bunch of people who only recently started to talk about it because of a discovery that was basically a repeat discovery. Mickey, as far back as we can possibly gauge that's been documented, came from Egypt.
Yeah.
And they called it mana, or what was the other term for it? Mufcut, that's right. And mufcut itself is gold, and you can eat it, but there's something very special about it. It's been turned into a white powder. Now, you don't get a white powder from gold if you crush it, but there is something very special about gold that forgot to be gold. You treat it in a particular way, and it loses its atomic bonds, its valent bonds, and turns, or metallic bonds, and turns it into just a simple white powder, so fine that it can go inside your fingerprint. And it's that, when consumed, starts to give us special properties.
Yeah.
Some of those, they're all healing properties for humans. It affects your brain. It affects your telomeres. It makes them grow, and has been formally discovered. I think the winner of the 2009 Nobel Prize for Medicine or Health, I can't remember which one, he was the one that patented his version of monatomic gold and isolated what it was that gives us a longevity or a youthfulness and repairs your telomeres. It's called telomere. It's the chemical. That chemical is found in a bunch of creatures. Not surprisingly, that jellyfish we talked about before.
Yep.
But the monatomic gold makes our bodies produce that. Now, what's interesting is the fountain of youth may contain monatomic gold.
Yep. And
when consumed, that's what it does.
Because it does occur naturally. There's a farmer, which we won't go into that now, but let's just say that this monatomic gold, or in fact anything of the platinum group metals here that comes in monatomic form, does exist in nature. By which process it's created in nature, I don't know, but we certainly have evidence that it did actually exist and still does.
Well, what's really weird is there's been people who have discovered this in their own properties.
Yep.
Now, is it David Hudson?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so David Hudson was a farmer, and he was wondering why his crops weren't doing very well. He decided to put through a centrifuge a sample of his soil. And what he did find was that all the soil turned in layers, which is what you would expect. So what you do, you get your soil, mix it with water, put it through a centrifuge, run it there for a while, and it'll separate into its heaviness. And so the lighter elements will form individual layers above the heavier elements, and stones and stuff at the bottom. What he found when he separated each one of those out, each one of the layers, and dried them, is at a particular point, some special characteristics began to be exhibited by those things that look like just simple white powders. And he was no physicist, although his father was a chemist, I think. And long story short, he discovered that he had monatomic elements in his property, and one of those some special things that it does, besides consuming it is a superconductor. It has a zero gravity when heated to a specific temperature. It also has an effect on its host, so whatever you put it on, it's like a superconductor would be able to levitate over a magnetic field. Same deal, and it also combines readily with other elements in the air to never scan up quite properly as gold ever again. Yep. So if you were to put it into a mass spectrometer with nitrogen gas to eliminate any oxidization, it turns into a different element. It scans up as something else. It isn't gold. Although you started with gold, it no longer is now shown as gold. Now, that's the aside. What were the Egyptians doing it? Well, they were baking it in bread and feeding it to their kings. That's what they did. It's there. It's written on the walls. And in fact, they found the production center for turning gold into monatomic gold. And
that's right.
And why? Well, the special properties that it gives you as a human when you consume it is that it synchronizes both sides of the brain. That was tested by the fourth cleverest person on the planet in a study. He studied this stuff. It synchronizes both hemispheres, and it makes you... You know that day, Mecky? I just want to say, have you ever had that day? The day when you're at work, you woke up, life's fabulous, there's not a downside, and when someone asks you a question, you've got an answer for it, you're snappy, you're on target, you're focused. Guess what? That's what it does.
Yep.
Every day, everyone tested it, and it's cumulative. So everyone tested the day before and after taking it, all became more intelligent. It starts to grow back your telomeres. It makes you healthier. The only problem, of course, that was discovered before, the longer you live, the more possibility you have to an accident or predators, cancer. So when someone says, it can cause cancer, no, it doesn't cause it directly, as far as we've been led to believe. What it does do, though, is give you more ability to come in contact with that. So, that makes sense. The more time you can spend on a game show, the more you're going to win, right? Or the more you can lose. So Mecky, I hope I've covered off all the topics on that.
No, look, you have. Thank you very much. In fact, in excellent detail. Thank you, sir. So it is that material, right? Obviously, that also is believed to be the philosopher's stone, right? And people that have that's why people or philosophers, alchemists specifically, have tried to reduce substances to their very basic components, right? They sift and filter and boil and cook and so on and so forth until they get to the philosopher's stone or Stein der Weisen or whatever you want to call it. Now, and we want to share with you some people that are historically claimed to be immortal by others. Right now, the records that we have are obviously too few to determine whether or not these people actually claimed immortality themselves or even existed. Right. However, some significant sources show they are claimed to be immortal by various religions and folk legends and mythology and so forth. Right. So there are certainly There's certainly some, evidence as to how they work. Now, before we go to that, though, there's something I want to mention here that Dave asked me to mention, which is very important, which is the sacred Ark of the Covenant. Now, why is this important? Well, because the key thing is that the monatomic gold is made by electrical fire reduction. So you have to melt it or smelt it with an electrical fire. That's the most surefire way to produce monatomic gold, as far as we know. Now, what is the Ark of the Covenant? Well, if it's nothing if not a massive charge-producing box, it seems, right? If you touch it, you die. It was also meant to be used as a two-way radio to speak to God, right? And well, again, I will argue here that it's not actually God we're speaking to, but someone else rather, with a high level of technology, right? You can hate me for it, but that's my opinion. So it's certainly right, and it's certainly a mysterious object, right? And then some people believe that the internal dimensions of the sarcophagus of the Great Pyramid of Giza are identical to the dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, someone rebuilt, according to the description in the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yep,
and you
that's
can
true.
Have a look at the YouTube clip yourself, and it does produce a significant charge. It produces a significant charge, and potentially you can use it as a two-way radio if you wanted to, right? So, again, slight digression, but certainly you could have used it, I would imagine, to transform gold, as it were, into its monatomic state, okay, and then use it for all its great benefits that we have. Not just gold, but any of the elements of the platinum group. Okay, now, Dave and I will take these in turn. The immortals, or people that were claimed to be immortal, and we will also talk about the most interesting immortal of all, because for him, there's the most evidence. First, though, there's Melchizedek, who lived in the 18th century BC, so some 4,000 years ago. He was a priest, and according to some translations of Hebrews 7:3, this is what it says. Without father or mother, without genealogy, which means without ancestry, without beginning of days or end of life, like the Son of God, he, Melchizedek, that is, remains a priest forever. So potentially immortal in the Bible.
Wow, his name almost sounds like melted cheese.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry to humanize that, but that's very funny, right, to me. That description sounds like someone who is immortal.
Yep.
It does. Who's the next one? Is it Tithonus?
Yes.
I didn't know whether the H was silent or not. Who in Greek mythology was granted eternal life by not eternal youth.
It was a punishment.
Wow, to live forever. Remember the sadness that I talked about. All your loved ones would disappear eventually.
And he would age and get sick, but would not die. And that's
Wow.
really it's a horrible punishment if you think about it. Right? Now, several originally immortal men and women, whom the ancient Greeks considered historical figures, such as Achilles, Helen of Troy, Ino, Memnon, Menelaus, and Peleus, achieved physical immortality, in capital letters here, through the intervention of the gods. Very important, guys.
It sounds like the Valentage case.
Yes, sometimes the gods, and I leave it up to your imagination whom I'm talking about here, take it upon themselves to take or make exceptional human beings immortal as well. Because I guess it gets boring after a while. You get the same old, right? Get some fresh blood in there. Anywho.
I love your way of thinking. If only you, Meki, were one of the gods.
If only.
Yeah, I know. Because, that'd be boring.
Yeah.
If only we lived forever, Meki, I'll tell you, if we were gods. When asked, you say, I'm a god, not the god. Another one here is the Wandering Jew. 1st century BC. A Jewish shoemaker, according to legend, he taunted Jesus on his way to crucifixion. Jesus cursed him to go on forever till I return. Thus, the Wandering Jew is to live until the second coming of Jesus. Wow.
Yep.
I don't have anything to add to that, Mickey, by the way.
No, I'm with you. John the Apostle, one of who lived right around the time of Christ, of course. One of Jesus' followers, and some Mormons, in conjunction with their own scriptures, interpret the biblical scripture found at John 21:21-23 to mean that John will tarry, which means remain, on the earth until the second coming.
Wow. What about the three Nephites between AD 34 and 35? 3 men described in the Book of Mormon who are given the power over death in order to fulfill their desire to minister among men until Jesus comes again. There's another one. See, the gods were bored.
Yes, sir. Sir Galahad is the next one here, and the dates for his life fall between the 2nd century and the 6th century, so obviously there's some accuracy issues here. Anyway, he was one of the 3 Arthurian knights, 3 of the Round Table, that were sent out to find the Holy Grail, which some believe to be the cup of Christ. Others believe something else entirely. Of them, Galahad is alleged to be the only one who achieved, or to have achieved, immortality by it. So the Holy Grail seems to be able to grant immortality.
Wow, that's awesome. Merlin, Mickey, comes to mind as well. Dates for his life fall between the 2nd and the 6th century. Very similar, Mickey, to Sir Galahad, of course. In some accounts, Merlin is trapped by an enchantment by Nimue, or Nume. And while I'm expecting a repronunciation from yourself, and while some end with Merlin dying, in others he remains in the trap, variously a tomb, a cave, or mist indefinitely. So thus they become immortal.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the next one is one of my favorites because you're probably all familiar with it, even though you don't know it. And it's the story of Nicholas and Perenelle Flamel, and they lived in the 15th century, so some 500 odd years ago. And they were alchemists who were reputed in later manuscripts to have acquired immortality to the use of the Philosopher's Stone, which of course we just identified as the monatomic gold. Now, they are mentioned in Harry Potter, okay, by name.
Wow, I didn't know that. Well, I did know that, of course, but I didn't know that. Count of Saint Germain, 1712 to 1784. Variously described as a courtier, adventurer, charlatan, inventor, alchemist, pianist, violinist, and an amateur composer, and Richard Chanfray, a French magician and singer who, blah, 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 1940 to 1983, who claimed to be the Count of Saint Germain. So, Mickey, this person looks like they've lived through a number of lives, but kept going.
Correct. So now, the Count of Saint Germain, as we alluded to earlier, is actually the most interesting case that we have here for you guys, because there is quite a bit of things that don't add up about this particular guy. I want to share that with you. Okay, so the Count of Saint Germain was born. Well, we believe he was born in 1712, and we believe he died February 27th, 1784. He would have been 72 at that time. Okay, and as Dave has said just earlier, he's described as a courtier, an adventurer, charlatan, inventor, alchemist, pianist, violinist, amateur composer. He spoke many languages as well. Right? He achieved great prominence in European high society in the mid-1700s, and since then, various scholars have linked him to mysticism, occultism, secret societies, and various conspiracy theories. However, it appears that the Count of Saint Germain may have arrived on the scene in Europe as early as 1710. At that time, he appeared to be in his mid-40s, just like me. The story goes that he always appeared this way. He never seemed to age. From 1737 to 1742, this is some 30 years after that, okay? He was supposedly in Persia studying alchemy. He went to Versailles in 1742, and then in 1743 he was in England for the Jacobite Revolution. Look it up, it's very interesting. He then went to Vienna to visit Frederick the Great, and then to Edinburgh in 1745. In 1755, he went to India. He came back, or rather, when he came back, he stayed in the royal chateau of Chambord in Touraine on King Louis XV's invitations. There he rubbed elbows with Voltaire, who appeared to be impressed. Right now, Voltaire didn't really impress easily, I can tell you that.
Not easily impressed, that man.
Not at all, no. So Saint-Germain left France and went to The Hague and London in 1760. In 1762, he supposedly went to Russia and was involved in the revolution there under the pseudonym Graf Saltykov. He later traveled to Germany and Bavaria, all the while maintaining a middle-aged appearance. Maybe he had really good skin cream. Count Saint-Germain died on February 27th, 1784. There is a record of his death and burial. During his time in Europe during the 1700s, the Count of Saint-Germain acquaintances had an awful lot to say about this strange man. He was said to have had a striking appearance, especially his eye. He has very striking eyes. He was reportedly a very talented musician and composer who shared his works with Tchaikovsky and Prince Ferdinand von Lobkowitz. Two of his compositions dwell in the British Museum. They're still kept there. One of them was written in 1745 and the other one in 1760. He even performed on the harpsichord for Frederick the Great. The harpsichord, of course, is the instrument Mozart composed on as well, forerunner of the piano. Count Saint-Germain was said to have knowledge of Sanskrit, Chinese, and Arabic. He also spoke Swedish, Portuguese, French, Italian, German, Spanish, and Russian flawlessly. He also painted beautifully. Now, at the very least, he was an extremely intelligent man. Okay. Now, he was also said to have some very strange habits. Okay? Some people claimed that he never ate in public, but that he would drink a special tea frequently. There were also claims that he often made strange comments about his age. He would also speak of times long since past as if he had been there. He reportedly told an acquaintance who had made a comment that he must be more than 100 years old, that it was not impossible. Okay,
wow.
So this is really strange stuff, and this is the most interesting immortal, I think, at this point, right? So you think about it, Dave, if you were immortal, wouldn't you take some of your time to learn languages and become good at painting, maybe learn music? I mean, right? This is what you would do. If you traveled, you would pick up the languages where you were. Sanskrit, of course, is one of the oldest surviving languages to this day. Okay, and in fact forms the basis for both Hindi and German, believe it or not.
Do you know what I find extraordinary is, I made a funny comment there, a god, not the god. That's from Groundhog Day, if you don't know. Yeah. And do you know what, Mickey? What's Bill Murray do through the whole film? Learns how to play piano, learns how to ice sculpt. He helps everybody. He's known by everybody. This guy was known by everyone. His tales preceded him. When he went from one town to the next, you can imagine how he would have been received. He was well known, and they knew about him, but they'd never... It's not like today. It's not like if you fly from one country to the next one, there's photos of from Twitter or Instagram or whoever you are, Facebook, whatever, and people can keep up to date with you. Yep. That would have given him away. He would have never have aged. His timeline going back 3 centuries would have shown that, he's been around for a while and never aged a millisecond. I think his specialty, like you mentioned, was monatomic gold.
Look, hey,
it fits the story, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. And look, guys, I mean, there may be more than one way to skin a cat here, right? Or to skin this particular cat. Dave and I are not saying that the only way to immortality is through monatomic gold or whatever it may be. However, it seems to be the most successsul way to get to immortality. And you're right, Dave. He may very well have been drinking that particular potion.
Well, what's funny? You're right, Mickey. But I'm sorry to cut you off really quick. But the guy, the doctor who won the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 2009, or one of the sharing doctors in that prize, he'd been self-prescribing his own telomere solution for a number of years before he won it. And he actually reversed his age from being in the 40s down to being about 35. So as long as he maintained that youthful look, a guessable age. And you know what? I think it would be, in fact, quite unusual for anyone to speak more than just 3 languages fluently. Yeah. To be able to have a conversation with anyone in any language, unless you spent a lot of time there.
Oh, completely. And I can tell you from personal first-hand experience that you will not learn a language well or as a native unless you live there for quite a while. I've lived in Australia for 26 years. I born in Germany, lived there for 19 years, and you may still detect an accent.
No.
No, that's my point, though, right?
Exactly.
It takes a long time for it to fade away. You know? So it's not saying unless it's possible that you've got a special genius for languages where you can mask your accent. But you're right, Dave. It takes a long time to perfectly learn a language, and you have to be in the location where it's spoken.
Exactly. But it goes back. It goes back further back in history, Meki, to the Egyptians. Yeah.
Ah, look, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? So, what we're going to share with you next are the king lists, both of the Egyptians and the Sumerian and Babylonians. It is really, really, really interesting. Now, I'm going to I'm going to give you the Egyptians, and Dave is going to give you the Sumerian and Babylonians, and just listen very carefully to what they share with us here, right? So, the ancient Turin king list lists a mythical pre-dynastic reign of the gods, which first occurred 36,620 years before Menes, which was 5,000 years ago. He was around in 3,000 BC. One fragment from Manetho, which is Greek, was an Egyptian historian and priest from Sebennytos, who lived during the Ptolemaic era, which is so these were the Egyptian pharaohs that sprang from the loins of the general Alexander Ptolemy, right? So he installed Ptolemy as the Egyptian pharaoh after he conquered Egypt, and that was approximately during the 3rd century BC. Also dates the reign of the first Egyptian god Ptah, 36,525 years before Menes. Okay, these were the first to hold sway in Egypt. Thereafter, the kingship passed from one to another in unbroken succession through 13,900 years. After the gods, which of course were extremely long-lived, the demigods ruled for 1,255 years. Again, another line after that held sway for 1,817 years. Then came 30 more kings, reigning for 1,790 years, and then again 10 kings ruling for 350 years. There followed the rule of the spirits of the dead for 5,800 years. So what we have here, obviously king lists that go back at least 70 or 80,000 years, right? And with the the date of the god Ptah, 36,000 years before Menes. That's a very long time, guys. And some of these ruled for thousands of years. Now, Dave has actually some more fascinating information here for the Sumerians and Babylonians, which actually predated the Egyptians. That's important. Sumerians, Babylonians predate Egyptians.
I just want to say this: if I had a ruler of my country or region who didn't go away for 36,000 years, oh boy, you'd hope that they were nice. You don't want it to be the current ruling party, I'll tell you. The standard ancient Sumerian king list is WB444, lists various mythical antediluvian kings and gives them reigns of several tens of thousands of years. The first Sumerian king, Alulim and Eridu, is described as reigning for 28,800 years, followed by several later kings of similar periods.
Now that's one guy reigning for 28,000 years, right?
That's right. In total, these antediluvian kings ruled for 241,200 years from the time when the kingship was lowered from heaven to the time when the flood swept over the land.
Mm-hmm.
I have to just quick out here. The Sumerians talk about a time when they came and created mankind. And they talk about the kingship and coming down and building two cities, one in South Africa and one around about where we'd find Egypt, or modern day Iraq.
Yep.
Excavations in Iraq have revealed evidence of localized flooding at Shirapak, modern Tel Farah, or in Iraq, and various other Sumerian cities, all dated to the same time. A layer of riverine sediments, or alluvial sediments, radiocarbon dated to 2900 BC, interrupts the continuity of the settlement, extending as far north as the city of Kish. Polychrome pottery from the Jemdet Nazr period, 3000 to 2900 BC, was discovered immediately below that layer, that flood stratum, putting a date at the flood of around about 3000 BC. The flood described in the Sumerian king list is believed to have a historical basis and has been dated to about 2900 BC. So around about the 100-year mark. We don't really know, but that's pretty close as we can get. Adding 241,200 years to that gives a 244,100 BC. It's when the Sumerians say the kingship lowered. However, most modern scholars do not believe that the ancient Sumerians or Babylonians believed in a chronologically. Oh, I can't say it, Mickey. I'm all over the place today. Chronology. That's it. Which is time of their own this old. They don't believe that time really existed back then. Instead, they believe these figures were either fabrications or were based. This is talking about not the Sumerians or the Babylonians, but they don't believe, the historians don't believe, that it was based on literal stories. So, not literal solar years of 3,600, solar years of 365 days. But it said maybe lunar months of 29. They're trying to make it sound right, but I don't think that's where they come from. If they can fly across space, they know what time is. Okay, if this is true, we need to divide everything by roughly 15. Let's make it 20 to be safe, which gives Alulim, Eridu, his rule at 1,440 years. I mean, it's still pretty long, Meki.
Yes, sir. That's the point, right? I mean, even if you allow for the correcting factors that scientists should be applied, saying, well, no, they weren't talking about solar years. No, they were talking about lunar months. Okay.
Well, good luck with that. That's still 1,400 years old.
Yeah, that's still a whole of a long time to have some single guy, rule over you. So, yeah. I want to quickly, I don't want to depart from our show, but somebody asked a question in the chat room, which sort of fits in here. I just want to very quickly explain carbon dating, very, very quickly, and the shortcomings thereof. We've actually done shows around carbon dating, but
yep.
So you've got relative and absolute dating. Relative dating is when you look at stratas of the Earth, and you look at them in you think that the lowest one, the deepest ones are older than the highest ones. That's relative dating, right? So you find something in an older strata, you think it's older than something above it. That makes sense. Absolute dating is actually looking at the half-life of certain radioactive elements.
Carbon-14, for instance.
Carbon-14, which is the most common, but there's a whole host of other elements which have a half-life. Okay, so half-life means any element goes through, nuclear decay.
Yep.
Okay, so that means it becomes half as radioactive in a given period of time. So let's say you've got half-life of 1,000 years. So let's say radioactivity is measured at 10. after 1,000 years, that radioactivity is measured at 5. I'm just making up stuff here. Okay, so that's essentially how it works. Now, there are some shortcomings with that because they assume, number one, that the background radiation and all things remain the same for the time that you're looking at. So nothing changes the natural radioactivity and decay of the elements.
Also,
that's very important.
And also, Meki, when we did the dating show, we discovered there's a whole bunch of rare metals that only they transfer from one metal to another metal over time due to their decay. And it's the percentage of those constituents within the metal that shows how old that metal is. So depending on what it's changed from and to, and there was a really interesting show, and I think you should go back and have a look at our dating show. So when we're talking about dating, we understand the difficulty that is involved in accurately dating a stratum, a layer of soil, alluvial soil. But we've got better ways of doing it now, and that's to actually look at the single cell creatures that live in that layer when it was put down, because they if they're fossilized, we can tell, and we can actually look at their family tree and know where they lay on it. But these layers don't. I mean, we're talking about the Big Flood, right? And these are found all around the world, and they seem to be real. We've done a show on that as well. So when they're guessing at these ages, I mean, it's not so much a guess. It's more, well, this is what the machines tell us because we scanned it.
Yeah, based on certain assumptions, guys. Okay, you have to understand that this model falls apart if the assumptions aren't correct. And I urge you, if you are interested, to look either at the show notes for the dating shows that we did, or listen to them on YouTube. Either way, we in fact recently redid the dating show. Because it was one of the lost show cycles. So just have a look at that. I mean, if you are interested, please, because we spend a lot of time researching and it's all fact-based. You can make up your own mind on that, of course.
Absolutely. Is this some Cicero reacting to... Cicero, okay, Cicero. I didn't know it was an added H. Reacting to the chronologies. I can't say it today. Chronologies. There we go. I'm putting an H in. I spell it with 3 silent H's. Of such authors as Berossus, who composed a Greek language history of Babylonia known as the Babyloniaca, during the 3rd century BC, strongly criticized the claim that the Babylonians had kings going back hundreds of thousands of years. He quoted, "Let us scorn the Babylonians," he said, the men whose records, as they themselves assert, cover a period of 470,000 years." That's his quote. Diodorus Siculus also wrote something similar about how he believed the Babylonians fabricated their chronology. This is a quote, "Man can scarcely believe them, Babylonians, for they reckon that down to Alexander's crossing over into Asia, it has been 470,000 years since they began in early times to make their observations of their stars." Despite these criticisms, to be honest, some ancient Greeks, including most notably Alexander Polyhistor and Proclus, believed the Babylonian kings were hundreds of thousands of years old. You know what? I mean, they say it, and their texts are still written in the same stone as they were written in originally.
Yep.
Not been, wrongly translated. That's just what they say.
Yep.
So, Meki, take the Persian Empire.
Absolutely. Look, the Persian Empire, which of course, again builds on the Sumerian and Babylonians and so forth, but was much later in time, lists the reigns of several Shahs. So Shah is just the Persian word for king or emperor. In the Shahnameh, which is an epic poem by Ferdowsi, are given as longer than a century. These are the reigns. Okay, so there's Zahak, who reigned for 1,000 years, Yamshid 700 years, Feridun 500 years, Ascani 200 years, Kai Kavuz 150 years, Manuch-Er 120 years, Loras 120 years, Goshtas 120 years as well. In the Roman Empire, in Roman times. Pliny wrote about longevity records from the census carried out in 74 AD under Vespasian, Emperor Vespasian. Now, the Romans loved their census, right? They loved to have people counted and have the right taxes paid. Now, apparently, in one region of Italy, many people allegedly lived past 100. 4 were said to be 130, and others even older. The ancient Greek author Lucian is the presumed author of Macrobii, which means long livers, or the long-lived, which was a work devoted entirely to longevity. Most of the examples Lucian gives are what would be regarded as normal long lifespans, 80 to 100 years. Now, in those days, that was pretty long. Life expectancy was not really that high.
You'd be lucky to live to 35.
Right? Yeah. He's 40. Oh, he's ancient. Tiresias, the blind seer of Thebes, was allegedly alive for 600 years. That came from Lucian. Nestor lived for 300 years. Once again, that's something that Lucian tells us. According to one tradition, Epimenides of Crete lived nearly 300 years. And we, of course, have the biblical connection.
There is.
Right?
Methuselah, as well as Old Testament characters, were listed as living very long, but only in antediluvian times, which is the pre-flood era.
Yep.
Prior to Noah, clearly. Methuselah, 969 years. Jared, 962. Noah, 950 years. Adam, 930. Seth, 912, not Seth Rogen. Imagine enduring his movies for that long. I'm kidding. I love you, Seth. That was a joke. It's a joke, I think I'm channeling, what's her name, from the Fashion Police. Kenan, 910. Enos, 905. Mahalalel, 895. Lamech, 777. He was a Boeing aircraft. Shem, 600. Eber is 464 years. This is, like I said, antediluvian. This is pre-flood. This is when, and what happened after the flood, Mickey?
We all got a lot shorter lived.
Exactly. So let's gather our thoughts, Mickey. Who was considered immortal?
Well, gods and demigods, and as we've learned, the people who were made immortal by the gods as well, right? This is important to know. So, obviously, to the average Joe, as it were, or the average, Coropaster, or whatever his name was, is someone who lived in the hundreds of years or maybe even thousands. And again, we can also look at relativistic space travel here as well to justify those ages. Would seem like a god or a demigod or a great hero of some sort, maybe even a demon or a spirit, because obviously someone who was alive in my great grandfather's time could not be a normal human being, right? No.
Hate is gonna hate. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Now, so gods, right? I want you to reflect on that for a second here now, and then we're going to talk about that some more as well. Where did gods always live? Where were they always dwelling? What did they do? They all, for the most part, seem very petty and entirely reflecting the human range of emotions that we all have, only much worse, right? Because they were more powerful, so that damage they could actually wreak was much greater. I submit, for one, that we're not talking about gods. We're simply talking about very powerful individuals, powerful in the terms of the technology they had and the long lives they lived, right? That's very important. Now, however, let's see what the Asians think about this. Because we've only talked about pretty much about the Middle East, Europe, that's where we have concentrated here. But China is awash with mythology around the immortals. Xu Fu's first expedition to the Mount of the Immortals. Okay, this is what I'm going to tell you now. In Chinese mythology, the mountain is often said to be the base for the 8 immortals, or at least where they travel to have a banquet, as well as the magician An Kui Sheng. Supposedly, everything on the mountain seems white, while its palaces are made from gold and platinum, and jewelry is grown on trees. Now again, we have got the reference to gold and platinum group elements. There's no pain and no winter. There are rice bowls and wine glasses that never become empty, no matter how much people eat or drink from them. German or European fairy tales have the very same themes around bowls that never empty and cups that never drain. And there are magical fruits growing in Penglai that can heal any disease, grant eternal youth, and even raise the dead. In ancient China, various emperors sought the fabled elixir with varying results. In the Qin dynasty, Qin Shi Huang sent Taoist alchemist Zhu Fu with 500 young men and 500 young women, so not a small expedition, to the eastern seas to find the elixir. But he never came back. Legend has it that he found Japan instead and settled there. Right? So that's the origin of the Japanese settlement. The ancient Chinese believed that ingesting long-lasting precious substances such as jade, cinnabar, or hematite would confer some of that longevity on the person who consumed it. Gold, again, was considered particularly potent as it was a non-tarnishing precious metal. The idea of potable or drinkable gold is found in China by the end of the 3rd century BC. The most famous Chinese alchemical book, the Tan Chin Yao Che, The Great Secrets of Alchemy, dating from approximately 650 AD, discusses in detail the creation of elixirs for immortality, which include mercury, sulfur, and the salts of mercury and arsenic are prominent, as well as those for curing certain diseases and the fabrication of precious substances. Okay. Many of these substances, far from contributing to longevity, were actively toxic. Okay, so what we have here is imperfect knowledge. Okay, that people tried to build immortality on.
Well, so is aspirin, Mecky.
Yeah, true enough.
And so is fluoride, as we all know. We talked about that as well. These are toxins.
Correct, sir. Now, those guys obviously built their science, or alchemy, if you will, on an older knowledge. Okay, but only imperfectly. Okay, so they had the gist right. You can eat gold, or substances of that nature, and it'll prolong your life. But you can't just eat that. You have to do something with it. So Jiang Jing, emperor in the Ming dynasty, died from ingesting a lethal dosage of mercury in the supposed elixir of life, conjured up by his alchemist.
No surprises there.
No, not really, right? British historian Joseph Needham compiled a list of Chinese emperors whose death was likely due to elixir poisoning. Chinese interest in alchemy and the elixir of life declined in proportion to the rise of Buddhism, which claimed to have alternative routes to immortality. Guys, yes, they do. They have a way home for us. We discussed this last week and the week before. The pineal gland. You don't want to live here forever. You want to go home, I'm assuming. Right? That's what I think. Dave, we have some interesting information out of India as well, I think.
Yeah, we certainly do. But I think we're actually going to run out of time for today's show, because I think we've only got about 1 minute before the break by the end of the show. Yeah, it should be like 7:57. So, look, to everyone out there, I want you to have a look and look at the Ark of the Covenant video for your monatomic gold, and look up David Hudson.
Yeah.
Look up his like 8 or 12, 13 videos sequence of him talking about how he found it. It's extremely interesting for you to look at that up so that you can catch up with us at the end of this. There's the music. I was right on time. How good am I, eh? We are going to continue, and then probably in the week or the week after that, we're going to have James Bartley on, which is a great interview. We'll get you some more info on that. Have a great time. We'll see you next week for show 153, and don't skip those commercials.
That's right.
See you, everyone.
Bye-bye.